Thank you. I want to start by saying that I'm a believer in resource nationalism. And I believe that is, for me, the starting point. The resource belongs to the people, and so the people must benefit from the resource. That is the starting point. However, resource nationalism must be based on knowledge, must be based on fact, must be based on commercial reality. So we have people outside the sector rightfully wanting and demanding more for the Ghanaian state. I don't have any problem with that. However, there is a very good article by Ken Hado in the Journal of Energy and Natural Resource Law on tendering. Whether
I've read that.
Yes. So the question is, to do a good tender, fortunately, natural resource, particularly mining and petroleum, oil and gas, are both extractive. To have a tender, you must have adequate, credible information. If we decide to resource, for example, the Geological Survey Authority to do the initial prospecting, do the initial survey, do the initial prospecting, and we now have certain data that we have this mineral resource, you have this mineral, then we can call for a tender, because like we do in petroleum, because then it is known, you've shot your seismic, you have all your data, so then you are tendering to get the best terms. But not when out of every 10,000 prospective prospects, you are only going to get 1,000 prospects, actual prospects. And then when you actually do the work, you will be lucky if you get another 10% coming to culminating in a mine. So there is such huge unknown risk. And I'm 65 years old. I've lived through regimes. We had the State Gold Mining Corporation in the gold sector. Why did it collapse? First of all, the Ghanaian state couldn't put in the needed resources, the investment needed. We couldn't. Then there were issues with technical and commercial management of this. In those days, we had majority control and we couldn't manage it. Has something really changed? I'm also the ranking member on state-owned enterprises, and the history is generally abysmal.
So first, you concede that the question of tendering doesn't come in at the start?
At this stage, no. Unless we do further work.
Our law actually makes provision where we are the ones who have made sort of the investment into gathering the information about the discovery, then we can tender.
Yes.
But in this case, like you read about the researchers, you agree with their conclusion where they say, I read just a portion of the conclusion, where they say, for hard rock minerals, material value occurs too late in the prospecting, exploration, evaluation cycle for it to be, in most cases, available to the state to tender. In the early stages of hard rock exploration, unlike with oil and gas, the odds of economic success are very low, and therefore mineral rights for such activities have too low a value to be worth tendering. Alternatively, the costs and risks required to generate value worth tendering are too great for it to be prudent for the state to incur. Having borne the costs and risks of value creation, as it should, the private sector should have the secure right to an adequate return on its investment.
No, I agree with the conclusions. However, this does not mean the Ghanaian state should not maximize what it can get from the arrangement. My major thesis is that if Ghanaians want to get more from these relationships, we should be prepared to invest more. And one of the things I would be raising when this agreement comes before Parliament for ratification is that MIIF should increase its equity shareholding. So we are going to put as that MIIF should put money where its mouth is. I think MIIF should be able to do more than the 6%.
You just made a concession, which means that there is fairness in allowing the prospector and explorer to have the exclusive right to mine.
No, the right to mine is not necessarily exclusive. For the investment you've put in, yes, you have the right to mine. All I'm saying is that MIIF is not carried. MIIF is putting in equity. That is the difference. MIIF is putting in equity. So my personal position, and I've espoused this, in fact, even I told the minister, that we should get MIIF to increase its equity in it. When we increase our equity, then we get a lot more from the venture. But that is even not the only issue. Have we capacitated our regulatory bodies to ensure that the Ghanaian state is not cheated? For example, transfer pricing between the Minerals Commission and GRA. We need more capacity to be sure, especially when the Atlantic Lithium has the right to sign offtakes with others. What is the price that the commodity or the product is being priced in the offtake? The Minerals Commission and or the GRA should be in a position to look at, yes, you have the right to sign, but you sign this offtake, at what price? What is the prevailing world market price? And because world market price is not static, how do we benchmark that? If it's a 5-year offtake, that at any one point, the Ghanaian state gets the best price. So these are the technical issues that we will have to deal with as a people to ensure that we get our value. First of all, we must put in more equity. Secondly, we must learn from our history. If we went for example, in the gold sector, the royalties are less than 10% in the gold sector. That is. In this particular one, royalty is gone to 10%. Are we really, is it our intention to make money as a state from royalty? Or to make money from full participation? I think royalty is just one item. And if we take in royalty at the mine head, then we can also reserve the right to take the product and sell our portion of the product, or allow the company to sell the product at world price with our regulatory bodies, making sure that the product is not undersold, and then we take our 10%. And normally our 10% is gross. It's not net.
You just said that you will be urging MIIF to increase its equity.
Precisely.
MIIF has informed us.
Beyond the 6%, let me.
Yes.
Beyond the 6%.
MIIF has informed us that it is going to subscribe for about 20 million Atlantic Lithium shares for a value of $5 million US. equaling 3.06% of the total issued share capital of the company. They also say MIIF has the right and warrants to buy more shares at locked-in price, and this could increase MIIF shares in Atlantic to 4.5% if warrants are exercised. What's your specific, what specifically are you looking at when you say they should increase their equity?
The 3.3% you mentioned is in the parent company. It's not in the Ghanaian operation. I'm talking about the Ghanaian operation. We have very little control over the operations of the parent company because that is outside Ghana. But I am talking about the 6% in the Ghanaian entity that we would need. My personal position is that MIIF should increase its equity in the Ghanaian operation. And because that is within the control and the purview of the Minerals Commission and GRA, we can work on transfer pricing, ensure that there's no transfer pricing, ensure that profit is actually declared. And between GRA and Minerals Commission, we should put in the capacity, that is if they don't have the capacity. Those are the areas that we gain as a people. Then, yes, I like the community development fund, but that is not the real game changer. The real game changer for me, and I agree with Bright Simmons on one area, that let's tighten the contractual obligations for the setting up of the chemical processing plant in Ghana. Let's tighten it. There is that commitment. The agreement I have seen, and by the way, let me state this here. A former Attorney General advised that agreements in natural resource space, which will need parliamentary ratification, should initially should not be signed, but they should be initialed. Until Parliament ratifies, then there is a formal signature. That was the advice given to us when...
But the law says it's an agreement you bring there. It doesn't say it's an incomplete agreement you bring to Parliament.
Well, you see, I am not a lawyer, but the difficulty then is that if Parliament rejects it, can they sue? Can they take us to arbitration? If Parliament rejects it...
There is a precondition.
It's a condition
stated right in the agreement itself.
Yes.
At the very beginning in clause 1.
Yes.
That this agreement is subject to ratification by Parliament. And there's a reference not only to our constitution, but also to our statutes, and which require mandatorily that there will be a ratification.
Yes. And that is
which means the person who has signed the agreement agrees to the potential that they will have to renegotiate the terms.
Yes, which is the very reason why the former Attorney General advised that rather than sign fully, we can initial, both parties can initial.
I'm trying to understand, what is that? A half agreement? The agreement ought to be executed before you take it to Parliament.
Well, this was the advice when I was minister.
Okay.
Because we got into some problems. Indeed, I see the sense in that position because if you remember the excess capacity, the NDC government signed too many power purchase agreements. When we asked that, look, I brought only 5 agreements to Parliament. Only 5 of such agreements have parliamentary approval. And yet the minister, again with a legal opinion from the Attorney General, that some power purchase agreements signed by ECG were also binding, and they counted all of them as agreements we had signed. And then I said no, because all those agreements contained a government consent and guarantee. So it is in the context of that, because then you have a situation where even the Attorney General says that those agreements have been signed, and therefore we have to negotiate an exit over those agreements. And that is the controversy when you have the situation where the NPP government says NDC signed too many power purchase agreements. And I said, no, only 5 of them were approved by Parliament.
Okay.
And so they are only those 5.
So listening to you,
So that is the issue.
essentially, you don't seem to have specific issues with this agreement.
I do, but not in the
except you want the equity of MIIF to increase.
No, that is one. I want the agreement to be tightened.
How?
I just gave you an example.
Which part of it?
For example, the processing. Because the current agreement says they should present a plan. And they should do a feasibility. And if the feasibility turns out that, okay, it is not feasible to set up the plant in Ghana, so we won't do it, then the Minerals Commission, the government of Ghana, will have to find a partner, somebody, to do it. So those areas can be tightened. The general...
Tightened to say what?
To insist that they must be a processing plant in Ghana. For me, that is critical. But
it is the feasibility that determines having that.
So we either do the feasibility first.
Which we understand has been delivered.
Yes. We either then do the feasibility first before we sign the contract. Then we are extremely specific. So that area can be. But I also have an issue.
But the language of the contract makes provision that once feasibility supports, then it ought to. But if the feasibility proves negative, it's consequential. You don't have to.
You see.
So what is there to tighten?
There is a lot to tighten. We must not export the raw material.
Which is a given, which is already set out in this contract.
No. From your very argument, if you say, what if the feasibility is negative? What do you do with it? From your argument, turn it the other way around. Okay. And that is why one of the reasons why
thankfully, Mr. Isi is here. We also have Edward also on the line with us. So let's get some direct answers from them right now. On this.
I'm not.
Okay, go ahead.
Because my colleague has so much more. But the most important thing is to look at mining, and in particularly the green minerals, holistically. I would prefer that we have a law, whether it comes under an LI specific to green minerals, or we amend the existing mining and minerals law to make provision for green minerals, so that we are extremely clear. But we should also understand that we are on we are on an unknown trip. I believe a lot of research is going on to find alternatives to lithium for batteries. If you read the literature, there's a lot of research. What if tomorrow there is a new product? What do we do with our mine? Okay. And that is where the byproducts, very little emphasis is being placed on the byproducts in the public space. The kaolin is critical. The silica is critical. The 3 major byproducts, their impact on our industrialization.
MIIF has a right to 40% of the lithium spodumene. I don't know.
No, is it 40 or 50%?
40% of that. And is seeking to use that to leverage.
Well, the document, I don't know if it's revised. The document I have seen is 50.
Then,
yes.
Atlantic and MIIF are to develop the feldspar value chain.
That will go into our ceramics.
Great.
And our tile industry. And for me, that is a major.
And that is good?
No, it's good. It's good. That is major. Does that not answer your concern? It addresses a part of it, but the linkage and the discussion in the public space, the impact of this, if properly managed, on industrialization and manufacturing, that has had very little space. So far, it is just the mining, the lithium batteries, but the downstream effect, if we manage it well, it's going to help this country out.
Okay, thank you very much.